The psychological siege of the wilderness is complete when the mind breaks, but the ultimate terror does not end there. Sometimes, the spirit of cannibalism is historical, an ancestral curse woven into the very mountains, and sometimes the whispers driving the madness are coming from an intelligent, external, and unseen source. We shift our focus from the psychological collapse of the North to the enduring, brutal legacy of historical survival, where starvation forged the first American tales of consumption. This is the grim, historical reality of the Donner Party curse, the price of survival in the Sierra snows. The story, rooted in the tragic winter of 1846, 1847 inches, the Sierra Nevada mountains, remains the nation's most famous and painful survival narrative. The build-up establishes the setting and the catastrophe. A group of pioneers, led by George Donner, attempting to cross the mountains late in the season, became trapped by record-breaking snowfall. Supplies vanished, rescue was impossible, and the deep winter consumed their hope. The main conflict is the slow, agonizing descent from humanity. As starvation became absolute, the group resorted to cannibalism to survive, an act of pure, desperate necessity that forever stained the Sierra Nevada passes. Though the act was driven by survival, the sheer psychological weight of the event created a lasting legend of a profound curse. The twist for the modern hiker lies in the psychological echo. The Donner Party curse is not a traditional ghost story, but a psychological warning. The profound desperation, the utter madness of that historical hunger, has left a psychic stain on the land. Hikers who traverse those snow-covered paths today report an overwhelming, inexplicable sense of gnawing hunger and sudden, crippling paranoia. When they are alone, a terrifying suggestion that the ancestral spirit of consumption still haunts the mountains, waiting for the weak to succumb to the same final desperation. Hey friends, you're in Dreamcatcher Stories, your cozy corner for stories that got lost along the way. Tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it there for you? Hit me up in the comments and tell me how this one hits you. Now, let's get sneaky and peek behind the curtain. The symptoms of the consuming madness are often signaled by a simple rejection of nourishment, even when salvation is present. This is the tragic case of the trapper's confession, what he saw that made him refuse all food. The focus is on a solo trapper in the Alaskan interior, found by a supply team suffering from extreme exposure. The trapper was lucid enough to speak, but his body was failing due to rapid, self-imposed starvation. The build-up establishes the psychological barrier. The trapper's supplies were fully stocked. Starvation was impossible. When questioned by the rescue team, he made a chilling confession. He had seen something in the woods, a massive, skeletal figure, and ever since, his body had been taken over by a profound, agonizing delusion. The main conflict is the clinical manifestation of the Wendigo. He confessed that his own food, perfectly preserved, now tasted like rotten flesh, and every time he looked at his hand, he saw the same immense, skeletal hunger reflected in his own eyes. He believed that eating normal food would accelerate his transformation into the monster. The twist is the permanent consequence. The trapper died soon after, not from true starvation, but from the fatal rejection of nourishment imposed by his own deranged mind. His confession provided a terrifying detail. He refused food, not because he was hungry, but because he was desperately trying to avoid feeding the thing he felt growing inside him, ensuring the internal curse was fulfilled. The power of isolation is not limited to the deep forest. It finds its perfect vessel in the remote isolation of the ocean. This is the chilling mystery of the empty lighthouse, the final entry before the keeper vanished. The setting is an extremely remote lighthouse off the coast of Maine, in the 1930 seconds, manned only by a single keeper named Arthur. The build-up is the absolute crushing silence, punctuated only by the ocean. The main conflict began when a supply ship arrived and found the lighthouse completely unmanned. The lamp was lit, the equipment functional, but Arthur was gone. The only piece of evidence left behind was the keeper's logbook, placed open on his desk. The final entries were chilling. They began rationally, documenting weather and maintenance. But the last week showed a terrifying decline. Arthur detailed hearing unnatural, rhythmic scraping sounds coming from the base of the stone tower every night. His entries shifted from sounds to visual sightings. Large, dark shapes ascending the walls. Something too high and too flat to be a man or a creature of the sea. His final entry, written in shaky handwriting, consisted only of one desperate sentence. They are climbing the walls. They are climbing. The twist is the maritime horror. The lighthouse walls were too sheer for any conventional creature. The keeper vanished, leaving behind only the logbook, cementing the terrifying possibility that the silent entities stalking the deep woods have silent, aquatic, or non-biological counterparts that view our most isolated coastal structures as mere climbing apparatus. The final, sophisticated form of psychological assault is auditory. This is the phenomenon of the sound of mimicry, the bizarre entity that lures hikers with human cries. The phenomenon occurs in the vast, remote Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail systems. Hikers report being lured off course by sounds that defy explanation. The build-up emphasizes the vulnerability of the solo hiker. When completely alone, the human mind craves connection. The entity exploits this. The conflict utama, main conflict, is the sound itself not a scream or a cry, but the perfect, terrifying mimicry of a loved one's voice calling for help, or a familiar rescue signal, always emanating from deep within the trackless brush. The twist is the intelligence behind the sound. This is not a simple echo. Investigators and experienced trackers have noted that the sounds are too specific, too personal, and too acoustically perfect to be natural. This suggests an intelligent entity, the deep woods whisperer, that has observed human behavior, learned human vocal patterns, and actively uses this knowledge to lure isolated individuals to their doom. The danger is not that you hear a monster, but that you follow the voice of someone you trust into the arms of the unknown. We conclude by returning to the core psychological state: extreme, deliberate isolation. This is the study of the deep woods whisperer, the hermit who learned to speak the forest's language. This narrative explores the psychological fate of a hermit who deliberately chose to abandon all civilization for decades in the Northern Rockies. The build-up details his successful, years-long survival based on minimal contact and profound solitude. The main conflict began when a logging crew encountered the hermit. He was thin, strong, and visibly aged, but his speech was completely gone. He communicated only through a series of clicks, whistles, and low guttural moans that were clearly not human language. He seemed to be communicating with the surrounding environment, pointing at trees, mimicking bird calls, and reacting with profound anger when the crew spoke English. The twist is the neurological puzzle. Experts determined the hermit had suffered a form of language degradation unique to extreme isolation, replacing human speech with a functional, self-developed language composed of environmental sounds. He didn't just learn to live in the forest. He learned to speak its language. The whisperer became the living embodiment of the ultimate psychological fear, that prolonged solitude will eventually strip you of your humanity, leaving you forever speaking the tongue of the empty woods. These 5 stories, from the historical curse of the Donner Party and the fatal rejection of food by the trapper, to the auditory terror of the deep woods whisperer, confirm that the most terrifying mysteries of the American wilderness are rooted in the fragility of the human mind and the relentless power of isolation. And there we go. Another memory back from the dark. Don't go too far. I've got more mysteries itching to be told. Which entity is the most insidious psychological threat? The intelligent mimicry that uses a loved one's voice, or the hereditary psychological breakdown implied by the Donner Party curse? Let me know your analysis in the comments below. And if you dare to explore more stories of isolation, psychological breakdown, and the dark secrets of the northern wilderness, be sure to subscribe to Dreamcatcher Stories and hit that notification bell. Until next time, stay safe and think critically about the shadows. The true mystery is not only what they are, but why they continue to appear in our most sensitive airspace, delivering cryptic warnings and baffling our most advanced military minds. The ultimate terror is that the forest doesn't send a monster to kill you. It turns you into the monster to kill your friends. The ultimate conclusion is that the wilderness acts as a psychological lens, amplifying our most primal fears. And sometimes, the forest doesn't just whisper, it leaves behind terrifying physical evidence of the mind's final, cataclysmic break with reality. The psychological siege of the wilderness is complete when the mind breaks, but the nightmare truly continues when we return to the places of human endeavor, the abandoned parks, and the remote mountain ranges, only to find terrifying evidence that the entities and the madness were never fully contained. We look first at the ultimate symbol of failed human endeavor, the abandoned amusement park where the secrets are bolted into the infrastructure itself. This is the unnerving story of the secret compartment, the disturbing discovery inside the abandoned roller coaster. The park, abandoned since the 1992, was a rotting monument to faded excitement, covered in rust and graffiti. The build-up focuses on urban exploration. A team of experienced urban explorers risk trespass to navigate the decaying structure of the park's largest wooden roller coaster, the Thunder Serpent. The coaster was massive, its tracks weaving through dense brush and forgotten maintenance sheds. The main conflict began when the team reached the highest structural support column of the coaster's lift hill. There, hidden from view but accessible via a flimsy, bolted metal panel, they found a small, tight compartment. Inside, shielded from the elements, they didn't find treasure or maintenance tools. They found a collection of personal effects, several faded driver's licenses, wallets, and a small, heavily used diary, all belonging to different people. The twist was the disturbing realization about the compartment's function. The diary contained cryptic notes about waiting for the signal and references to the cleansing. The compartment was a carefully constructed drop-off point for identities. The cleansing, the presses, the top stop of Brandstein, suggesting the abandoned park was being used as a staging area or final destination for a group that needed to vanish completely, shedding their former lives and identities inside the structure of a defunct amusement ride. The Thunder Serpent wasn't just abandoned. It was actively being used as a gateway to disappear. We move back to the most persistent mystery of the deep American wilderness, the inexplicable disappearance. This is the vanishing point. Why search dogs fail. In the national forests, the buildup establishes the standard search and rescue protocol. When a hiker goes missing in a national forest, the first and most critical tool deployed is the scent tracking dog. They are highly reliable and rarely lose a track unless the subject has left the area. The main conflict focuses on the pattern known as the vanishing point. In dozens of documented cases across U.S. national forests, search dogs will follow a scent perfectly, often over difficult terrain, only to suddenly stop, sometimes violently whining and refusing to proceed, at a specific, localized spot. There is no scent trail past this point. It is as if the subject simply stepped off the planet. The twist is the technological anomaly often associated with these spots. Investigators in some regions have noted simultaneous, localized GPS failure or inexplicable radio static at these precise vanishing points. The phenomenon suggests that the missing person was not taken by a conventional predator or led astray by disorientation. They were removed vertically or transdimensionally by an unknown force. The reason search dogs fail is not because the scent dissipates, but because the subject ceased to occupy the terrestrial plane at that exact spot. The threat of the wilderness is not always subtle. Sometimes it is geological and utterly catastrophic. This brings us to the night the mountain moved, the massive creature that caused an avalanche. The setting is a remote section of the Rockies during the late fall. A small, experienced climbing team was stationed near the base of an isolated, steep mountain face. The build-up focuses on the immense stillness of the mountains, which amplify every sound. In the middle of the night, the climbing team was jolted awake, not by wind, but by a series of colossal, rhythmic thudding noises coming from high up the mountain, sounds too heavy to be falling rocks, too organic to be an earthquake. The main conflict culminated in the environmental destruction. Minutes after the thudding started, the entire team witnessed a massive avalanche roar down the mountain face, destroying the opposite slope and filling the valley with a profound sense of seismic upheaval. When they hiked out the next day, they found the source of the noise, a massive, miles-long track of destroyed trees and disturbed rock high on the slope, not consistent with a landslide. The final, terrifying conclusion reached by the climbers. The movement was caused by a single, immense, biological entity, a massive, cryptid creature whose sheer mass and movement were enough to destabilize the mountain itself. The mountain that moved was a living, colossal beast. The horror of the remote landscape often involves the terrifying sociology of isolated human groups. This is the abandoned school bus, the cult mystery in the remote state park. The setting is a remote, heavily wooded state park in the Midwest. Park rangers stumbled upon a decades-old, stripped-down school bus, hidden deep within an inaccessible hollow. The build-up focuses on the internal evidence of the bus. Inside, the seats had been removed, replaced with crude bunks, and the windows were painted over. There were remnants of a complex, hand-drawn calendar, bizarre symbols, and shelves stocked with decades-old, non-perishable food. The bus had clearly served as a long-term base for a small, isolated group. The main conflict began when investigators found the group's final project, a massive, meticulously constructed cairn, a stack of stones, in the center of the hollow, built around a bizarre, metallic idol. The entire scene suggested the hidden base of a cult or isolated religious group that had disappeared without warning. The twist was the lack of human remains. The group had vanished, leaving their fully stocked base and their finished ritual site intact. The only explanation was the discovery of one final laminated note pinned to the door. The cleansing is complete. We have left the earth. The abandoned school bus remains a dark monument to the collective madness and eventual, complete vanishing of a cult that sought ultimate isolation in the park. We conclude with the most frustrating physical anomaly associated with cryptids and unknown entities. This is the Skinwalker's footprint, the bizarre track that vanished on solid rock. The setting is the desert plateau of the American Southwest, near areas known for high UAP activity and skinwalker phenomena. A rancher reported finding the strangest track he had ever seen. The build-up focuses on the track itself, a large, three-toed footprint that defied identification, too heavy for any known animal, and seemingly structured like a large reptilian foot. The rancher, a veteran tracker, followed the print. The main conflict reached its terrifying peak when the trail led directly across a massive, flat section of exposed, centuries-old sandstone rock. The footprint continued across the hard stone as if it was soft mud, a perfect, deep indentation in the solid rock. This was physically impossible. The twist occurred the next morning. The rancher returned with authorities, but the footprint had completely vanished from the solid rock surface. No wind, no erosion, no terrestrial phenomenon, could have erased the deep indentation in the stone overnight. The only logical conclusion was that the entity that left the print possessed the ability to alter the physical density of the rock, or that the print itself was an anomalous physical projection that faded after a single night. The fleeting evidence solidified the terrifying, non-biological nature of the skinwalker threat. These 5 narratives, from the hidden compartments of roller coasters and the sociological terror of the abandoned cult to the geological destruction caused by the mountain beast, confirm that our human spaces and our wildest territories are actively occupied by secrets, anomalies, and entities that defy our comprehension. And there we go, another memory back from the dark. Don't go too far, I've got more mysteries itching to be told. Which anomaly is the most terrifying evidence of non-terrestrial interference? The vanishing point where search dogs fail? Or the skinwalker's footprint that vanished from solid rock? Let me know your analysis in the comments below. And if you dare to explore more hidden dangers and bizarre true mysteries in America's abandoned spaces, be sure to subscribe to Dreamcatcher Stories and hit that notification bell. Until next time, stay safe and think critically about the shadows. The true mystery is not only what they are, but why they continue to appear in our most sensitive airspace, delivering cryptic warnings and baffling our most advanced military minds. The ultimate conclusion is the horror of the internal curse, but the terror does not end there. Sometimes, the spirit of cannibalism is historical, an ancestral curse woven into the very mountains. And sometimes, the whispers driving the madness are coming from an intelligent, external, and unseen source. The psychological collapse of the lonely mind reveals the depth of human fear, but sometimes the fear is immediately tangible, physical, and absolutely bizarre, hiding not in the deep woods, but in the hot, stagnant swamps and in the fields of small, isolated American towns. We shift our focus now from the cold, psychological sieges of the North and the maritime isolation to the biological and technological horrors of the American South and Midwest. Our first story is rooted in the thick, humid, and vast cypress swamps of Florida and Arkansas. This is the mystery of the skunk ape enigma, the foolish creature hiding in the Florida swamps. The skunk ape is the southern cousin to Bigfoot, massive, bipedal, and elusive. But its defining characteristic is not its size, but its profoundly noxious odor, often likened to rotting eggs, methane, and sewage. This odor is often the first, and sometimes the only, sign of its presence. The build-up emphasizes the environment. The swamps are treacherous, dense, and largely inaccessible, making them the perfect hiding place for an immense, unknown primate species. Sightings often come from isolated fishermen, hunters, or airboat operators deep in the Everglades or the Myakka River State Park. The main conflict focuses on the physical shock of the encounter. Witnesses report being instantly overwhelmed by the smell, often inducing nausea and disorientation, followed by a fleeting glimpse of a tall, reddish-brown creature covered in shaggy hair. Unlike the reclusive Bigfoot of the Northwest, the skunk ape is often associated with more aggressive behavior, including loud screams and the throwing of rocks or branches at intruders. The creature seems highly territorial and hostile to human presence in the wetlands. The twist for the skunk ape is the sheer impossibility of its existence in such a densely populated region of the United States. It defies conventional zoological knowledge that a massive, distinct species could thrive for generations, completely undetected, in an area surrounded by human activity. The creature remains an unsolved biological anomaly, forever fouling the air of the Florida swamps. We move now from biological weirdness to a case that combines classic cryptid sightings with technological anomaly, known as the Flatwoods Monster, the high-tech creature that terrorized a small town. The setting is Flatwoods, West Virginia, the 12th of September, 1952. The height of the early flying saucer craze. The build-up began when a group of local boys reported seeing a bright, fiery object descend and crash into a hill behind the town. Led by a local resident and a National Guardsman, a small group of civilians rushed to the site, expecting to find plane wreckage. The main conflict was the creature they encountered. Upon reaching the top of the hill, the group was instantly hit by a sickening, metallic mist that burned their eyes and throats. They described a pulsing, reddish light emanating from a massive object and standing next to it, a towering 9 to 10 foot tall entity. The creature was described as having a rounded, hood-like head and a body resembling a strange metallic skirt or gown, emitting a loud, high-pitched hissing sound. The twist is the immediate, devastating physical consequence and the technological tie-in. Multiple witnesses suffered physical symptoms, vomiting, swelling throats, and nausea for days afterward, consistent with exposure to an unknown toxic agent. The creature's appearance, metallic, high-tech, and associated with a crashing aerial object, cemented it not as a natural biological cryptid, but as a chilling entity tied to the UAP phenomenon. The Flatwoods monster remains a terrifying, unsolved link between high-stakes military mystery and the biological horror of the unknown. These two stories, the smelly, elusive skunk ape and the towering metallic Flatwoods monster, serve as perfect bookends to the terror of the American periphery. One is the ultimate expression of feral biological isolation, the other a harbinger of technological confrontation. And there we go, another memory back from the dark. Don't go too far, I've got more mysteries itching to be told. Which creature presents the greater environmental threat? The skunk ape, whose presence is tied to foul contamination, or the Flatwoods monster, whose appearance is tied to unknown technology and toxic exposure? Let me know your analysis in the comments below. And if you dare to explore more hidden dangers and bizarre true mysteries in America's isolated places, be sure to subscribe to Dreamcatcher Stories and hit that notification bell. Until next time, stay safe and think critically about the shadows.